Hey everyone, I'm Jordan from New St. Andrews College. I'd like to invite you to join us for one of our upcoming prospective student weekends. We have one on March 2nd and 3rd, and another from April 13th to 16th. To learn more and to register your visit, check us out online at nsa.edu. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Hear the world calling, but son, don't you listen. They're only trying to drag you back into prison, that's right.
Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
And here we are.
We are, in fact.
This one's by the skin of our teeth.
It's not timely, guys.
Yeah, we're making all of the people involved in all of the technical side of this hate our scheduling.
Yeah, because we were going to be doing it on Thursdays to release Tuesdays, but what do you know? It's Tuesday afternoon. So
we're
if
like,
you all,
were you going to release it today?
Yeah. If
Should
you
we make it?
hear this on Tuesday, everyone, basically it was live.
Basically, you're here with us.
You're getting the really up-to-the-minute news.
I had something that I thought that I was having a moment this morning while I was cleaning and thinking. I was having a memory, a throwback.
Deep time.
A throwback to 6th grade.
Oh, that is a throwback. Okay.
And it just seemed like exactly the thing that I've been thinking about, and which is Christian discernment. You know, when people are like, oh, I can just discern the good things from the bad.
And we hope you can.
Right, but where they're maybe involved in something foolish or really probably not honoring God, but they're like, oh, don't worry, I'm discerning.
Yeah.
And it just hit me. I was like, I've seen that before. Where have I seen it before?
Yeah.
Throwback to the most influential field trip of my life.
Really?
In 6th grade.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Well, let me go there.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
You do. Well, we had a teacher, who was a pretty earthy teacher in 6th grade. And actually, I think this was a great field trip, although horrifying.
Scarring.
Horrifying. Burned into my memory for all time.
Okay.
We packed up our school bus and we got carted off to our local sewage treatment plant. And it was tough and rugged out there. Like, this is a side of life that, praise the Lord, we do not usually need to deal with.
It's just unseemly.
Oh my word, you probably think it's a hard time if you have to plunge a toilet. You know what I mean? Like, things are getting pretty third world if you have to plunge a toilet. When you go to the sewage treatment plant, you realize that you have never seen,
Life
you don't
is
have,
real and life
you
is
don't
earnest.
have the capacity to understand how bad it really is out there. we pull in a bunch of 6th graders and we start the tour and we were like, what? Because I remember there were so many moments of the tour burned into my mind.
Yeah.
But like one would be a man holding up sampled jars full of sewage in its various states. Like where he's like, you can see in this one, and we're all like, ah! like something you
We
never
don't
no,
want
but
to
kids,
see.
but there were kids sick on the bus. Like people had to leave the field trip to go be ill on the bus. And we were, nonetheless, we soldiered through. Now,
Just as a parenthetical remark, in a 4th grade field trip, our teacher got sick and had to go to the bus.
yeah, well, yours was
It was to the veterinary clinic.
even more gruesome than
Yeah,
ours.
the vet clinic, and she thought that would be great, but we walked through there, and they were dissecting a horse, I believe, and there were legs in a garbage can, and our teacher got sick and had to go out.
And it's like, why did I do this? Why did I bring the children here? Okay,
Because now the children are loose in the vet clinic.
well, the thing that happened to us, so the way it works at a sewage treatment plant is the sewage moves from pool to pool, becoming ever more.
I like that you're going to try and
It becomes ever
You're
more
gonna pull an
refined.
edifying metaphor out of this. For
Yeah,
us.
well, there is one.
Yeah, I know.
Brace yourself.
I think I even know what it is.
It's coming.
But anyway, go ahead.
So it moves from pool to pool until at the end we see truckloads of what is essentially dirt headed back out to the fields, and then water going. Like, it goes through many stages to just go back to the earth from whence it came. But
Dust you
but
are.
the part,
Dust
yeah,
you will
exactly.
return.
But the part that will take your breath away, that did in fact take all of our breath away, was at the opening gates of the sewage treatment plant. So I just remember us all filing into this, like, it almost seemed like a scenic overlook. In my mind's eye. But it was,
What could be better than
but
that?
it was the incoming sewage from a whole town.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh.
as it comes out of all the pipes that have flushed all over our town at the same time.
Ah.
It is a river flowing in. And it is horrifying. Like, truly nothing prepares you for this. And there is, and I need you for the sake of this metaphor to be with me on how dark and devious this is. Because you have to realize that, I mean, it's every shower drain,
Yeah.
it's really hideous. And there's large drapings of toilet paper coming through. So what you see is, you don't miss out on what you're seeing. You know what it is. You know what it is with horrible, like, because it's showers, it's like foam, like soaps, and oh my
I don't even
goodness.
want to think about it.
Okay, but where the waterfall comes in, there is some kind of a appalling belt that it's like it all begins to be like sorted. Like there's some man at the helm who works at this area, and he points out to us, and it's a long story, but he points out to us there's like a windowsill over this area, but we're real close to the action, so it's not, you don't feel good about it. But in the window is a whole bunch of little stuff.
Trinkets?
Like, I remember like a little troll doll
Oh, no.
and little junkus. Just stuff. Stuff, though. This is the thing. That the workers had snatched from the incoming sewage. Like a troll doll.
Yeah.
That you had to, like, it's not their job to grab that out of there.
They just found it.
They just did it, like, because they're that hard of heart. So there was, like, jewelry.
Yeah.
Or jewelry, or...
I feel like somebody we know.
If there was a
lost
diamond ring-
Yeah, no, they lost their diamond ring and they called, and I think they found it.
Yeah, see, this is the thing, is that that was the part that was intriguing, was that I could see if you saw a diamond ring going by, maybe trying to grab a net.
I'll tell you
with
why.
which to try to snatch
I'll
it.
tell you why I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be looking to see the diamond ring go by.
What you're saying is you wouldn't have a job at the sewage treatment plant.
Because
Yeah, I know.
Think of it.
Well, but my point is, much of the things that they had gotten out of there was like a $5 bill or something that you're thinking,
You're like, no way was
the
that
payoff cannot have compensated you for the darkness that you had to go through for this. And they're like, oh yeah, like among the hardened criminals, they're not criminals, they're actually doing the Lord's work.
They are
for all of
doing
us.
great service.
I used that in the
Great
wrong way.
service.
I meant they are so hardened to the appalling nature of it that it's among them nothing but a joke to have snatched a troll doll from it. But to us, I mean, we're getting sick and going back to the bus. All this has a point, which is that the Christian discernment, where you're in foolishness so deep.
Yeah.
But you think that whatever
Basically,
occasional goody
there are so many applications of this, but like the kind of person who is up to their eyeballs in watching completely inexcusable filth, but we found a redemptive theme.
right, like, but
There
one
was a
thing I
death
noticed,
and resurrection
and the
metaphor.
one that I yes, like, you're like, no, that right there is like a quarter in the flood of incoming sewage. Like, the fact that you located that does not impress us.
No.
It just
No.
confuses us as to why you thought that was worth it. Or when people say, I just, like the worst one from entertainment standards, I think, is when people say things like, it's just really interesting to watch, like, the power of sin to, like,
You're
mess
like,
people
really?
up. And you're like, did you have to go to the fiction to
Because
find that out?
basically, you could have just examined your own Tuesday morning.
Right, like, take a little look-see at something a little more your business than some imaginary sin in the, like, what is going on?
no,
Like, why
no.
is that something you've got to
No,
study?
but there's so many ways in which Christians, they triumphantly hold up the troll doll or the,
Right.
Happy Meal toy.
But I would say another example, like, so we talked about watching, like, one would be entertainment standards.
For sure.
Or whatever world you decided to immerse yourself in. Like, you
Yeah.
might be attracted to something and you're like, I really, really love this topic so much that I'm okay putting up with a little bit of Wiccan overtones. You're like,
Right.
what?
Right.
Why is that? Or say, even your own problem, like your own sin that you indulged in an appalling way, like say your anger, and then you come out of it with a little bit like, well, I'm glad we had this talk.
I learned more about myself.
Well, no, it's like, I'm really glad we had this talk because I needed to say some things I was feeling. And you're like, that was not
No.
what you did.
No.
Like, what just happened there? So that's a long story to get y'all hooked up with what I was thinking about Christian
Yeah.
discernment. But the reality is the people who were there were making the best of a difficult job. But going there as a fortune finder.
As a free diver.
Right, exactly, is a whole other thing. Like, I don't think anyone actually at the sewage treatment plant was in sin for what they were doing. But Christians who actually go to places like that to see what they can rummage up,
No.
it's like something is broke here. Like,
Yeah.
something is not right.
Oh, I'm with
It shows an unhealthy attraction to something.
Yeah, or just the things that people put up with, and it's for surprisingly little payoff. And
Yes.
and in the entertainment standards.
I think
question.
entertainment is the worst one because what will you put up with for the catchy beat?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, but it's kind of cute. Feels
Yeah.
like a summer day. And you're like,
Yeah.
but what are you
No.
singing?
And this brings up I was just talking with one of my classes about this. At what point do you decide this isn't worth it? Right? Like, at what point? Because you can't say,
Or almost
you
not
don't want to
just
get super simplistic and say, if it is a music by a pagan, it's automatically evil. Or if it has a beat, it's automatically evil. Because that's just simple-minded. But I was giving them the example that one time, years ago, I heard a song somewhere. It was while we were in England. I don't even know if the song made it over here. And to be honest, I don't remember what the song was now because I've blocked it. I've mentally blocked it. I heard this song and I was like, oh, I like it. That's kind of a fun song. And
Did you use the Google?
well, so what I did was I was like, oh, that was fun. And I kept hearing it around and it was just kind of like, it was upbeat and it was fun
Yeah.
and it was kind of funky because it had a sort of Bee Gees like flair to it, but it wasn't, it was just interesting, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it's kind of fun. So I looked it up and I read the lyrics because that's what we did.
That's what you
growing
do.
up.
Take a little
make sure that
look-see
you're
at
not-
what you're singing.
Make sure you're not accidentally, singing along with horrible atrocities. So I read the lyrics and they didn't make a lot of sense, and it was like, it's fine. There was nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing troublesome about it. And I liked the sound. So I had it on my playlist and I'd listen to it while I was, cooking
Yeah.
or whatever. And one day I think it just occurred to me, like, I wonder if they have any other good songs. And so I looked up the band, which I had just gotten the one song. So I looked up the band. By the end of that interesting session, I had deleted the song from my playlist.
He was just like, nope, no.
Never to be heard again because, and I'll tell you why. When I was reading about,
Because
and
when
the
you
thing
find out that the filthy doers
the
are who
song
made it.
was still fun. And actually, if I'd never found out about the band, I would have been fine.
You
But
could have pressed on
I
without
could
it
have.
being tainted.
However, the origin story of this band was whatever they were. Oh, and also I discovered that the name of the band was also like some kind of homosexual reference that I didn't get. So that's the name of the band. So we're starting with a real great place. But then they came together, this band, at a Halloween party where one of them was dressed as a botched back alley abortion.
No, and you're
And
like,
the other one was dressed as something else terrible. And I was like, well, no more with you.
it's like, actually, you don't even sing
No.
good, upbeat, peppy tunes.
I was like,
hate them.
I can't go with you. I cannot go with you. I don't care if that song was kind of fun in the moment.
Well, no, it's like
I
you don't
refuse.
make, and it's that simultaneous thing that is like you have absolutely no guilt for having listened to the
No.
song, but going forward,
But having-
you couldn't
yeah.
be reconciled to
No.
them. You're like, I have no desire for
No,
this.
why
Like,
would I invite you into my kitchen every evening
No.
while I'm cooking dinner?
Sing along to me,
filthy
you of the filthy
horrors.
background.
Just like horrifying, and the thing that
And
got me about
celebrating
that,
it in a
it's not
disgusting
even,
way.
celebrating it, reveling in it, like self-identifying with it. I was like, oh well, turns out I can't be friends with you.
Like that clears that up.
Cleared it up, and I think that happens pretty often, but where you suddenly realize, oh, that's so far over the line.
Actually,
I can't go with
did
you
it.
there.
I did that in however old I was. It was probably either like a senior in high school or freshman in college. So it was a while ago, and it was before Abercrombie and Fitch was at all popular. Well, it was just
coming
enjoying
online.
its renaissance.
Yeah.
And I was traveling with my parents, and at some point we were at a mall where there was an Abercrombie and Fitch, but it was like one of the earlier ones in the country.
Sure.
And it was beautiful. Like the store was beautiful. It had the wood floors, and they had at that time the huge black and white pictures were like sailboats. It was like it had that like adventure
was
feeling.
still kind of
it
preppy.
was stunning and beautiful and kind of preppy. And I had never heard of them, so the fact that their name was on something didn't bother me because it was not like whatever. So I bought some things there that I really liked. Like I had like a sweater that had a small A&F on it, and I think maybe a hat. There were a couple things that I got there that I liked. And then I guess when I bought it, I got signed up on their mailing list.
Okay.
So that was like right when, I'm sure if you paid attention to the history of Abercrombie, these were really all my plot points. Probably someone else came to the helm of their marketing team or something.
Probably.
But they mailed me up their catalog, which they made waves with their homoerotic college scene catalogs. And it had nothing to do with the store that I had been in. Like, it didn't, it was different. And I get their catalog. Of course, my first thought is, oh, cool, this is that store. Mm-hmm. And I open it up to page 1. It might have been the back. It was somewhere in summary of what this was about. And it was like, this is not a catalog. This is a lifestyle magazine. Like it was basically like, let us shape your worldview. Yeah. And then the other pithy
Step
remark.
over here so
the
that
other,
we can push you into our mold.
Let me be in charge of you. All of it. And then the next remark that leapt out at me was, let's face it, we're all just looking for someone to sleep with over spring break. and then it was a bunch of these like guys with their swim trunks pulled down way too low, standing all together awkwardly on the beach. And I was like, oh dear. Like,
you're like, well, that's where you've lost a customer.
I think my summary was, oh hell no. Like, threw it away. And I was sad because I liked my sweater and I liked my hat, and I got rid of both of them. Because I was like, well, if you're going to send out publications saying that this is what your name means, why would I have your name upon my sweater?
No, and it's totally different from, like, let's say that I found out that a band I listened to that actually had just totally innocuous songs, they were amongst themselves pro-choice. You know, that's such a different thing.
Oh, so different. Yeah.
Here I am, like, flaunting and reveling in this despicable sin. And that's what you're talking about. It's like, so what if you bought, you know, your shirt at Walmart and it turns out the CEO was having an affair? Like,
there are other brands that I know are just as pagan.
Just as corrupt.
What they have not done is make their brand about being on the other team.
Right.
Like,
So then when you wear that, you're like wearing the jersey of the
I was like,
people.
I wasn't trying
Yeah.
to draw team lines, but you did.
Yeah. And now that you've drawn it, I have to step to the other side now.
I'm gonna need to take off this here sweater and get out of this team.
Yeah, and we've had that before where, like you're watching along in some show, some TV show,
Yep.
and it's like, oh, it's kind of a fun show. And then out of nowhere, they make one of the main characters, like,
Irreparably.
abominable.
No, the trick is when they make the hero or the heroine something that they will not resolve.
No.
Like an irreparable
Yeah.
flaw in the character.
And you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to follow you
And
any
you're like,
further.
well, that'll do.
Yeah.
We're done here now.
Yeah.
Like, not
And
interested.
it's just, and it's not like there's a hard and fast line exactly on at what point must you turn around and distance yourself. But I think that
But
we
I
all
also-
kind of instinctively would know. Okay, this is a good example. This is one Ben was using yesterday. We were talking about people getting involved in like new agey things, but dismissing it as like, oh, well, I don't get into the new age part. I just use the part that's helpful.
yeah.
But sometimes that seems like innocent or something. But Ben was like, well, if you just removed the new age and you put in like horrible misogyny, for instance.
Or racism would be good.
Racism. Like, instead of the sin of new aginess,
Instead of
it
the
was
sin of lying about the character of God, let's say we were lying about the status of our fellow man.
then suddenly your line would ratchet up a lot.
Like, all of a sudden, Christians would be like, this
yeah.
is from hell.
And I cannot
right?
participate in
And,
this.
and you're like, but because why? You're more sensitive about that than you are about lies
Sure.
about God and
And
His
so
nature.
sometimes
And what?
it is worth saying, actually, if I was to, like, okay, I acknowledge it's a sin. Yeah, okay, it's a sin. It's like, well, just remove it for a second. And for the sake of argument, plug in another sin. And just see what it feels like. Like, would
Just
you
check.
back away from it? So, like the Abercrombie and Fitch thing. There are plenty of Christians who would be like, oh, that is so uptight of you. There is nothing wrong with it. But what if they turned out a KKK catalog? And
Right,
they're
like, what if they're like, let's face
let's
it,
face
we
it,
all just
we're all
want to
just-
hate black people this weekend. well, you would be like, well, let's all be clear that I have nothing to do with this
Yeah,
company.
and you'd be like, let
get me away from Satan.
Let me quickly take off my sweatshirt and throw it in the garbage.
and hope that no one remembers having ever seen me in it. That's the point that you're making, I think, is that it's not that we don't all do this. It's that we're sloppy on particular
Yeah.
things that are currently in vogue.
Yes.
And if it was not in vogue in our culture, we would be horrified by it. And that is something that you say, okay, so you're being shaped by your culture a lot more than you ought to be. Because if your primary thought is not the Word of God clearly forbids this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
If your primary thought of this isn't cool, if that's what you're thinking,
Yeah.
is mostly this is not a cool sin,
Yeah.
so I best get away from it.
But we should be clear that it is true that some sins are so horrifying that everyone would be immediately needing to back away from it. Whereas let's say the catalog had come out and it was just kind of advocating some low level grumpiness. It's like, well, that
Don't you
would
hate it when your mom tells you to do jobs on
like
the weekend?
that actually would be different. Like there are
very different.
There are varying degrees of like what kinds of sin are soul destroying sins, and you just really shouldn't be standing anywhere near. I mean, obviously all sins are
Yes.
soul destroying, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
No, but there's a substantial difference between getting involved in heavy lies, darkness, and not, like singing a dumb pop song. There's a difference. Like,
Right.
you're not saying that any sin is good sin, but just saying that
No.
some sin is way more
right.
what's the word I'm looking for? Less powerful or less I guess it's kind of like any sin is taking a turn off of the highway you're supposed to be on.
Yeah.
But some is like little pullovers or a little whirligig and then you're back on. And some is like you got on a freeway with no turnarounds
Yeah.
and you're in a horrible
Yeah,
way.
and I do think that like Christians can be very dismissive of pretty big scale sins. And they're
No
like, well, it
kidding.
doesn't affect me. And
Why would it?
that's always I think that's a key right there. If you ever find yourself dismissing it with, well, that doesn't bother me. I've heard people say this
Well, that's
about,
the thing about-
nudity in movies, it doesn't bother me. And you're like,
one of the things I notice is sex scenes don't bother me.
Right,
It's like,
and you're
is
like-
that why you shouldn't be watching it?
yeah,
No.
or is it because they bother God? And
Because you notice that he always says to not do things
That
if it's
bother
gonna
him.
bother you.
But it's like, does God hate it? And
Oh,
if
my
God
word.
hates it, why are you identifying yourself with it? You know?
Yeah.
Why are you
Why are you willing to be?
Oops, got a phone call.
Yeah.
So something Rachel got cut off in the midst of a
I'm
thought.
sure it was going to be great too. My thought was just going to cut to the heart of the issue and wrap it all up.
It was almost the perfect solution. But now, go ahead.
I think I was just going to say, trying to bring it into sins that are really normal. I think that's like the ability to overlook, like, say you follow a blog of someone who you like some small part of their style. So you're like, I love her for the way her
Flower
living room
arrangement.
looks.
Yeah.
No, and I love this. But I've also started to slowly listen to her and learn from her about things where she doesn't know God. She's not, and this is how you end up with Christian women suddenly being totally on the same page with totally liberal God haters about something that you're like, the Bible is very clear on this. Like, there's no excuse for a Christian to end up totally in the wrong camp on something like this.
Yeah.
But the way it happens is in really little loyalties, little like, but I love the way she dresses. So when she said that this is how she handles her son, but the photos are so beautiful that I assume that her idea that motherhood is about allowing your son to have a temper tantrum is probably solid. It's like, because have you seen her shoes?
Because
because
she's
there's
stylish.
great,
Stylish.
she's everything I want to be. Like, and it's like, that sounds dumb when you put it that way, except for it actually happens to people.
It happens to people all the time.
It is a process that is churning
let's
through
face
people.
it. The adulteress in Proverbs, the reason that many men are in, her road leads straight to hell and many are fallen there or whatever.
Yeah.
It's because it's attractive at the front end. That's exactly how we get led into awful places, is by allowing ourselves to be steered by that kind of thing. Like,
and it's Peter, isn't it? That says about the devil's like a prowling lion, right? Like,
seeking whom he may devour.
yes, it's like, you don't, that whole idea of Christians saying, oh, well, that kind of thing doesn't bother me,
Right.
is like, why?
But mostly,
What are you cool about with ravenous lions
but it's
prowling
sort of
around
like,
you?
do you think it should, though?
I know.
Maybe
Might want to
bother you.
reconsider. Usually when they say it doesn't bother them, they're saying it because they want to feel not as uptight as other
Yes.
Christians.
Yes.
But the reality is that they want to feel like they're way cooler.
But the other problem is, let's face it, legalistic Christians have given discernment a bad name.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Because-
Although, I find... it probably depends on your background, because I don't feel like I have not spent time feeling oppressed by legalism in my life.
Right.
Like, I have been free from that.
My rhetoric class, we were just now, right before I came here,
Uh-huh.
we were reading together an article written by a Christian who needs to go to a logic camp somewhere, an intensive
like-
logic camp.
Yeah.
It's an article called 10 Scriptural Reasons Why the Rock Beat in Music is Always Wicked. And each reason is like,
Good luck with that, Sporty.
reason number 1, because it gives place to the devil.
Well,
Reason number 2, because it causes you to rebel against your parents and the 5th commandment. Or, it's
Yeah.
basically like, this is not careful thinking. It is really obnoxious. It is not in any way a scriptural argument.
and if it was, it's failing on all the winsomeness categories.
The whole thing is one tautology after another, and it's like 95 miles long, this article.
No,
And but it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
it's just sloppy thinking, hasty conclusions,
hot messery.
indefensible conclusions, and all argued from really shoddy places. So, anyhow, I'm just saying that kind of Christianity it is true. You want to stay out of that ditch. Like, you don't want to find yourself
my
saying
word, yes.
that Abercrombie and Fitch makes baseball hats, therefore baseball hats are of the devil.
Well, and it should be clear that I believe that the fact that I was unwilling, well, like, I never walked into an Abercrombie after that. I think when they got one in Spokane and had the big, pictures of, it was always shirtless men, and when they got into that, I never even went in there. But I also would never have said it's inappropriate for anyone to have ever gone in there.
Right.
I know that was a line of conscience for me. Not that you would ever say a Christian may not purchase from Abercrombie.
No.
But at the same time, there is such a thing as saying, where are your loyalties? And maybe tune in and pay attention.
And the other thing is, okay,
and
so
I would say that it's the same with death loving skater shops and stuff. It's look around you.
Yeah, where are you standing
what
right
you
now,
doing?
sport?
What's going on here?
But here's the other thing, though. We frequently, here on the podcast, we've talked about, both of us read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And I'll be honest, I like her method of putting clothes in a drawer. I think it's a good system, and I came away with something solid there. However,
it's a little victory of
you
common
would
grace.
never, ever, either of us would never, publicly say anywhere, guys, I read this incredible book. You should totally read it. It's amazing. With no qualifiers.
No, because
We would-
you're like,
because you'd
the
immediately
fact
be
that
like-
she's a seriously whacked out
Yeah.
Shinto shrine maiden
You're like-
is relevant.
And you'd say, ignore the pantheist bits, because that's embarrassing, but I like the way she folds socks.
Yes, and we've got to give it to her that, and you might also want to say it was weird the way she tells you to thank your purse for its day of service.
Yeah. And so the point is that, I think oftentimes, people might in their own head be like, okay, whatever, that was stupid, but then they just blanket promote something.
I will tell you, Dad, this is something pounded into us by our father early on, because I remember Dad saying, you do not say it is a good movie if it is not, you don't just say that was good. And he was like, you can say it was I think somehow I remember him saying, don't say it was a good movie with a couple bad parts. You can say it was a bad movie with a good part.
If we fast forwarded 3 things, he would say, don't just go recommending it to people because you have to qualify.
Right. My friend's mom, who was a fellow pastor's mom.
Pastor's mom?
Sorry. My friend's mother, who was married to a pastor, said to me, did you see Home Alone, Rachel? And I said, it was a really bad movie with some good parts. Trying to apply what I had learned.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
And it's perfectly true that Home Alone sports some
there's a couple
dirty
things in there.
deeds,
There's
right?
a couple places. And so you always want to issue the qualifier.
Because
this
Christians
book, I learned
are not,
some good stuff in this book, but I should qualify it.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that is the difference, though. I believe that I think the things that we got out of the life-changing magic was more like finding something in a mud puddle. Where you're like, oh, it's kind of a mess. It was not the raw sewage situation.
No.
In the sense that you're reading it, you're not being
well, but here's the thing.
you could be, I guess, because
if somebody, hopelessly throwing themselves after minimalism,
yes,
if they actually bought into her worldview and actually started doing the things
Right,
that
if
she
they-
suggested, I would be like, hey,
we would need to have an intervention.
let's talk for a second about whether you're a Christian and what that means about praying to your possessions.
Your stuff. You can't say that to your stuff.
You can't do that.
That's a little
something
bit
to
of a
not do
no-no.
that. And so the thing is it was silly enough that you kind of assume that people are
Do
okay.
you remember when many years ago there was a young guy here in Moscow and Mom saw him in the paper that he had accidentally killed a guy in a drug deal gone wrong. There was some kind of a fight.
Yeah.
And he was at our local jail.
Yeah.
And Mom just really felt like someone needed to go talk to this kid, and sent Grandpa. She told Grandpa that there was someone at the jail. Grandpa just hustled on down and converted him on up. So he's saved at the jail. Just full of the joy of the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Just really...
He would write us letters.
Game changed. And when he got out of jail, do you remember this?
Oh,
the
I do.
Christmas
I
letter?
do.
He sent just a real full of the joy of the Lord Christmas letter about living with his girlfriend that they were
Praise
gonna...
the Lord, we've moved
Praise
in.
the Lord. We've moved in together now, so things are much easier for us than when I was in jail. And just praising it up that sometime we might get married. And then I love that was like Grandpa had to call him.
Had to be like,
He's like, hey, we forgot to cover this.
P.S.
P.S.
There's a couple things.
P.S. One of the things about being a Christian.
And he was shocked.
And he was like, what? You
Really?
don't say.
Oh.
What? I never knew this. Okay, well, let's get married. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, let's get this all right. It was very lovable.
Yeah.
It was a very, like, it was like, well, at least
Yeah.
that got handled.
But you hope that Christians, especially those who are priding themselves on their discernment, that you
Are
don't
not
have
that
to
gullible,
be like that.
right?
Like, tap, tap, tap. Pantheism is not what we believe.
One other thing we don't think is that we ourselves are gods. I'm gonna need to say negatory on that. Like, we're gonna...
You might want to refresh yourself on some of the basic
You might
doctrines
be
of our
missing
faith.
some things. We had we've recently have made some friends who are not Trinitarian. We've been talking a lot with them. And anyways, the thing that I have told my husband is so healthy about it is that we feel like we are in... This is a very sinister pizza delivery car. It has like trunk.
It's really sinister.
It's like
bungee corded together.
The hood of the trunk is a different color than the rest of the car, and it's bungee corded on.
With
Like
a
there's
little-
something bad in the back of
little
that.
pizza delivery TP
Tack
on the top.
yeah. So anyways, one of the things that I told my husband when you said we might need to go back and refresh on some things,
man, yeah.
is I was like, man, because this brought it up in our mind differently. We've been Trinitarian, both of us, our entire lives. Like we've never known a God that we didn't believe was the triune God. Like we have so we really have to like spend some time thinking about it to like process it.
And you both have studied it because
We
both
both
of you
studied
went
it,
to NSA.
but we've both studied it at multiple different times
Yes.
in our life. Like
Yeah.
as a child, and then later, and then when we had theology, and then. But you still feel like, man, we got to go get something out of the attic and dust up on this, because who knows? Actually, I've been surprised by how much you already did know, but because you might not remember the name of the heresy, but you know it was one.
you know
You're like,
that's not the one to do.
I need to hit my buzzer button for that comment. Like, that one's not it. But the thing that it mostly made me realize was I told Luke, it's like we live in a house with huge, big, beautiful windows, but for some reason we have not been noticing them. Mm-hmm. And like for some reason we've been doing something else. And then you found yourself at someone's house that has no windows. And you're like, so why don't you have any windows in here? I said, but I feel like what it did is make us go back to our house and we walk around admiring the view all day long. Like you're like, oh, look out this window, it's stunning. Like,
well, not to mention just when you have to defend something or you're trying to teach a subject, it makes you learn it in a way that you never learned it when you were a student.
When you're just listening, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, or whatever. Well, or you just notice different things that you have to resolve. Like, wait, what do we think about that? Or how did this? Yeah. And the thing that has been, the reason I said that is you said, if you run into something and you're honestly not recognizing things like pantheism.
Yeah.
Like, you're honestly not recognizing pretty major deals that ought to be handled.
Or you see it, but you don't think it's a deal.
Yes.
It's just kind of like, oh, well.
You're like, well, that's neither here nor there. If that is the case, that you're just pretty chill about things that are big ticket items, maybe you need to go back and actually study, why do we believe this way about this? You know, like, and not studying why is it not a big deal that people go this way, but study why does the Christian faith focus on these things? Like, why is this important? Because it's a really profitable thing to do. It's like walking around looking out your own windows and admiring the view and being like, oh my word, there's a lot of loveliness.
Yeah.
You know, like we've been given so much that we're taking for granted as we go out muddling through.
And of course it's possible to appreciate bits of, you know, like the pagans don't get every single thing wrong. It would be impossible to get every single thing wrong.
No, but like that's what Dad always says. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
Yeah, but also they are living in the world God made, which means that it's impossible for them to be, you know,
Well,
they're functioning.
they are a creature
in
that
this
God
world,
made. Yeah.
right. So it is possible to plunder the Egyptians, right? But that's one of those.
But I think
phrases
it's a difference.
That Christians say that all the time, like, "Well, we are allowed to plunder the Egyptians," and it's like, right, but that's different than staying in Egypt.
It is so different, and it's not. It's different than trying to be an Egyptian.
And actually, and one of my students pointed out when we were talking about this today, plundering the Egyptians. He goes, "But it's actually true too that plunder was what they used to make the golden calf out of." I was like, that's an interesting point.
When you come
And it was when they started wanting to be back in Egypt. Like,
they're like,
it didn't take too much time to
Right.
wish that they were back there and try to recreate a little bit
But
of
I think that thing about even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, it's like, which is true, but we don't try to enroll in nut finding school from that squirrel. Like, you know, you also appreciate the thing that they found, but you don't go, there's no like, so now he's an authority in our lives.
Right. I feel like we're keeping this very sort of in the abstract, though. We're keeping this all in the world in the world of hypothetical, unnamed situations.
Well, it has come to our attention in various ways and times recently that New Age things have become commonplace in the church in
much.
like non-wave making kinds of ways, like that. And sometimes when you're not looking at that straight on, or like if you're not naturally interested in it, you haven't been pursuing it, so you don't know what people are accepting. You know, like what they're...
It's just always good. Like, it's always good to just kick the tires of these things. Like when you find out about some hot new trend or some new book everybody's excited about or some new movement or some whatever, just do a little fact-finding mission and think, like, what is this thing identified with? What is the worldview behind it? Is this obedient? Is this... you know, fully corrupt? Is it, it's fully corrupt, but there's one or two good takeaways from it? Or, you know, like, it's just check. Don't just gallop down the road with everyone else.
I think what you're saying is don't become a mini troll doll collector until you find out what the incoming stream is. Want to join us in this game of looking for troll dolls? And they're like, yes, I do. I'll be really good at this. But then you're like,
well, that's what Dad always, his example was always diving for pearls in a cesspool. I mean,
but
it's like,
I know
there may be one or two.
My heart connects with that metaphor.
His other metaphor, though, is always like, how many slugs have to be in the salad before you decide the salad's not worth eating?
Yeah, like, at what point you're just like, oops, there's another one, let's just scoot that on the side of the plate.
Most of the time, you're not like...
And the thing is, this is the part that's weird, is that slugs in a salad is not sinful.
No.
Like, if you wanted to keep eating a salad that had slugs in it, I would just think... Wow.
Gross.
Wow. But at the same time, there's no sin involved in eating a lettuce that was near a slug.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about, typically, it's actually sin issues. So, you know, maybe we should care more about that than slugs in a salad.
Oh, I know. But I think this is true of all kinds of things. It's true in entertainment, and it's very, very true in fashion.
That was the great controversial thing I meant to say on the podcast.
Oh, well, please.
But should we controversy on this one? The thing,
should we try and keep it mainstream here, or what? How controversial are you feeling?
No, I was just going to say something occurred to me recently. Modesty is everyone's least favorite thing to talk about with other women because...
Well, yeah.
Because it's just... we've talked about it before.
Behavior abounds.
We've talked about it before. But one of
on
the
all sides of the topic.
yeah, it's just a big dumb festival. But one angle that struck me recently was that immodesty is often, and this is just a often.
This is broad brushing it.
I know that I am an impressionist painting, but it is often the case that it is just one of the early signs of someone who has not learned to submit. As a woman is not submitting either to the Word of God or to her parents' authority. They're like, we don't want you wearing jeans that are quite that tight. And it's like,
I will.
Mom.
I will wear them this tight.
they're awesome. Here I go. I can do no other. It's a sign. It's not like the immodesty is a problem because the Bible does say, to not be immodest, but because so much of that is down to interpretation, that a lot of the time it is refusing to accept the authority that is over you, which is really a problem with submission, not a problem with
Yeah, it's just
like
stiff-necked.
Yes, it's just being that way. And it just struck me that it is one of the early signs that you see of someone who will be difficult in marriage.
Who will be a stiff-necked wife.
Yes.
And in other topics.
Well, yeah,
Because it's
but I
somebody
think
who
it's like
won't-
in a young girl, modesty is one of the places, it's like one of the few handholds she has on that rebellion.
Yeah.
And because of that, if it's exhibiting there, and it isn't, we know this is broad brush because there's a lot of circumstances where someone is immodest genuinely because they don't know, or their mom doesn't care, or there's a lot of other reasons.
But I think, okay, so
But
you're
assuming Christian community.
if you're, assume a Christian community, assume a teenage girl who's pushing the limits.
Yes.
And who is always pushing the limits. Now, picture her. She's not going to say to her mom, if her mom says, hey, I think that skirt's too short, she's not going to say, like, I love immodesty, Mom. She's going to say,
No,
it
it's
isn't.
not.
It's not too short. You're just uptight. You
It's
just
fine.
don't know.
You're the worst.
This is
Yeah.
the fashion today.
You're so selfish. You
You're-
don't ever want me to look cute.
You're just old-fashioned. All of those things, like, they're all excuses. And then you take that same exact trait and you swap it out for something that's not immodesty, and you have a very difficult wife on your hands.
Yes,
Somebody
exactly.
who won't change their behavior, and who will talk back, and who will argue, and who will come up with lots of excuses.
But it's more like they are their only authority.
Yeah.
And as their only authority, nobody ever has a case with them about anything. Like, it doesn't matter how clearly biblical it is. It's not their authority that you're appealing to.
Yeah.
So it is not going to work. And really the only admonition in this is that if that's you as a young girl, as a college girl, or as a teen who's in a constant battling place about that, like where if someone was to say, someone who has a right to say it and who is not just being malicious to you,
Right.
that this is not an appropriate swimsuit,
Right.
or this is not an appropriate dress, or whatever. If that would send you like
Round the bend.
over the rails and like boycotting them for a long time and being horrific, you need to think about the fact that your problem may not have anything to do with them or anything to do with even
With
the modesty, but it has to do with the fact that you're an insubmissive and rebellious person.
And it's
And
not
that,
like you have to be submissive to some random church lady, but are you open to correction?
But is it a submissive spirit that you have going where you can honestly say, I'm learning now the tools that I will need?
But are you the
in my
kind
life.
of person who really wants to be pursuing Christ and getting more godly? Because the thing is, people have ridiculous opinions all the time. And if somebody was to say, I think that you're immodest, it's just Christian charity to say, thank you for your concern. I will pray about it. I'll think about what you said. Now, you don't have to agree with them, because there's no scriptural principle that says you always have to agree with everyone who expresses an opinion. But if you're the kind of person who just locks their knees and gets mad that the subject was brought up,
Like, how dare she?
how dare she say
Who
that?
would think that?
Now, that you don't have to end up agreeing with her, but you can at least just say, thanks for bringing your concern. I will definitely think about it. I will talk to my parents
Exactly.
and see what
And
they think.
hold it with an open hand, like actually being willing to be wrong sometimes. Like, it's a thing. So
It is.
that was off topic, but I
was
think
off
it is still something that is worth considering. To think it's not about how tight t-shirts are. It's about
Sometimes it is. But
yes, but beyond that, it could also be about how hard or soft is the heart.
yeah.
Like,
exactly.
what exactly is happening here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, well, I think we ran out of time, didn't we?
Do we need to recommend something really fast?
Hot tips. Like what?
Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Do you have anything happening there?
We're going out to a fun dinner with Luke's parents
That's fun.
Valentine's Day.
What do you do for your
tips.
kids for Valentine's Day? Anything?
Something little. I put something on their breakfast table. I do like usually something fun, or sometimes at dinner. One time for Luke for Valentine's Day, I made chocolate cookies. It was the kind of day where you didn't make a plan.
Yeah.
I made double chocolate cookies, and he had told me one time that was the best cookie dough. When I made them, I just didn't scrape the bowl out very well, and I cut out a big pink heart and put it in the bowl of this cookie dough mess. It was super thoughtful.
here.
It was super thoughtful
Dive
of
into
me.
that.
We don't do a crazy amount of anything for Valentine's Day because
No, I don't. We don't
because yeah. So
No, it's not a thing.
So what was
really
that,
at
a
our
tip?
house.
That was not a tip.
Wasn't a tip. I was just trying to feed you something that might give you an idea.
I know, but I do nothing good there.
I have a tip.
Okay.
I'm doing a dinner party on Friday. That is kind of Valentine's-y, but it's not really. It's for the junior class at NSA. So we're doing never mind, that's a long story. But the point is that there's a dessert that I'm going to recommend that I am making for it. And it is called St. Clement's Posset. And how could I not make it with a name like that? Because, wow. But
Are you going to share a link?
It's named after the nursery rhyme, Oranges and Lemons, the Bells of St. Clements. And it's super yummy. It's like cream and tons of orange and lemon juice and zest. And you thicken it and then do it with some candied citrus zest on top and some raspberries that you sort of
That sounds
macerate. It's really good. It's actually really yummy. And there's Jamie Oliver has a recipe for it, but I actually am using a different guy's recipe. Anyway, it's a fun dessert.
Mike is really head faking us with where to find the recipe.
Well, I found it on Jamie Oliver, but I actually switched and I did this. He's another British chef. I can't remember his name, but that recipe is on the Wall Street Journal, so you can't actually access it unless you have the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Jamie Oliver one is made slightly differently. You boil it longer. The other guys you don't boil. Anyway, I don't know, but I'm just saying oranges, lemons, and cream. It's really good.
I believe you.
It's really like tart and sweet.
Also,
and
you have a
fresh and
huge
amazing.
black smudge on your cheek, and I've been waiting
do.
to tell you.
Oh, that's good. Look at that.
All right. Well, have a good week. We'll be back.
I like that you saved that news for the end. Rach.
Well,
That
nobody
was
can
good.
see you.
You were a minute ago squinting out of one eye. Rachel's like looking. She was clearly like lining up a spot on the windshield with something out.
I can't remember what it was.
distance.
Oh, yes, there was a spot on the windshield, and I was tracking the.
She was like squinting with one eye shut.
It's a good thing you can't see us.
I don't know,
Goodbye.
guys. I was trying to say goodbye, but I said guys.
Well, until
We're having
next time.
trouble signing off.
We're really signing
Really?
off.
Okay.
I'm a 2009 graduate of New St. Andrews College, and I'm a commercial property manager.
3 kids at Logos, 1 at home still, and I do flowers on the side out of our house. When you have these little people that you're responsible to shepherd, you realize I need to know what I'm talking about because they need to have a firm foundation and they need deep roots so that they don't get blown over and that they're ready to stand up for the truth.
I am a programmer. The language aspect of NSA is a fantastic preparation for any sort of programming.
I'm a real estate broker here in town. I think absolutely the perfect education for being in sales of really any kind.
I actually put it to a lot of great use when I was working in the political realm.
I am a pastor in Central Coast, California. Whatever vocation you take, it'll make you take that seriously because you're seeing it through the lens of the sovereignty and lordship of Christ.
To learn more, visit us online at nsa.edu.